Hi, I'm Daniela. I am the Director of Languages at Lessonface, and we are here today in the Lessonface studios with Dina Maccabee, who is a violist and a violinist who also teaches on Lessonface. Dina, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So I teach Italian, and so I thought it'd be really fun to go over some of the Italian musical terms and see what they actually mean in everyday Italian. So something like piano, staccato, forte. So Dina is going to exemplify what some of these musical terms mean as she's playing the viola for us today. And we're going to go with some of the more popular terms and then slowly move on to some of the more nuanced, more eclectic terms. And yeah, so with that, you ready to jump in to play some of these terms, Dina? Sei pronta? You ready?
Si.
Great. All right, let's go. So one of the first terms that we have is adagio for the sort of tempo. How would you describe adagio?
Slow.
Yeah, basically, yes. And so in Italian, that you can actually say that to someone. So you can say adagio to like slow down if your kid is running across the street too fast, something like that. So Dina,
Great.
how would you play adagio?
Well, I thought I would play a little moment of adagio for strings, since you brought it up. And I'm looking at my music here, and I noticed that it actually says molto adagio at the beginning. So for me, that means very slow. Is that what it means?
Totally, yes. So molto adagio means very slow.
All right. Well, here is something very slow.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
So in this instance, adagio, molto adagio, very slow, in this piece also is very heart-wrenching and very sad. So that's not necessarily the case, but you need to play it slowly to have that sort of feeling, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. Adagio, we do think of slower as being maybe more sad and faster as more happy. And like I think allegro actually means happy.
You got it, yes.
But in music, it means fast. So
Totally different.
there's definitely some associations there.
Yes, definitely. Nice, so you know some Italian already.
Well, I know some music terms.
Yes. So moving on to the second term, we have fortissimo. So which, it's interesting. We have forte. So in everyday modern Italian, that just means strong. So when you add the issimo suffix to it, it means very. So that issimo is really just a synonym for molto. So fortissimo, in terms of Italian musical terms, is something that is quite loud, isn't it?
As loud as you, well, I was going to say as loud as you can, but that's not actually true because in the piece that I'm going to play, which is the very ending of Symphony No. 7 by Beethoven, we actually have a marking that has 3 Fs in a row instead of just 2. So 2 Fs we would say fortissimo. Now when there's 3, we usually say triple forte.
Triple forte.
So can you say that in
That's
Italian?
how I like my coffee.
Excellent. A venti triple forte, please. What would you if there was 3 Fs, can you say fortissimo?
You cannot actually.
Oh, too bad.
Yeah, so the issimo part is really a superlative, so you can't get more issimo than that,
I see.
in other words.
I see.
So, but, I mean, when you have the triple F, you know, you're going to the max.
That is to the max. So that's, I was going to say fortissimo is as loud as you can, but really triple forte is probably as loud as you can. So, well, here's a little bit of Beethoven. You have to imagine the end of a really long, exciting symphony. So this is
We're ready for
this
it.
Is it.
Yes. Awesome.
Fortissimo.
Nice. Exactly. Molto forte.
Molto, molto forte.
So, Dina, that was also interesting because there was also kind of a crescendo right in the middle there a little bit.
You heard it. There was. That means I executed it. Yes, we go down to this marking with a little P, which we would say piano, or we'd probably say piano. I don't know.
Coming up soon. Yeah. Yeah.
And then it goes back up to triple forte, and in between there it says in the music crescendo. So we don't usually really translate that. We just say crescendo and we know what that means.
Yeah, and that's another really popular term. So so crescendo going from something more piano to a little more forte. And of course, crescendo actually does not mean the same thing as it does in everyday Italian. So crescendo means growing. So from the verb crescere. So the opposite, decrescendo, meaning diminishing in sound. But yeah, so that's another really popular term that means something totally different in Italian. Cool. So as you already had a good segue to the next musical term. So now we have the opposite of fortissimo, which is pianissimo. And so similar to Adagio in Italian language, pianissimo means like softer, right? So, and typically it's associated a little bit more with something that's a little more slowly, if you're going a little more softer. So there's definitely some connections there between those two terms.
Does it mean soft in terms of volume or soft like a soft thing?
Yeah, like in terms of volume.
Okay, so that's the same.
Yes, that's a good clarification. And what's interesting is that, so obviously piano is a piano, a musical instrument. In Italian, the word for the musical instrument piano is pianoforte. So it literally means a soft loud. Interestingly enough. So what do we have for pianissimo?
Well, I thought it would be fun to play this little piece by Bartók called The Mosquito Dance. And since we already know what fortissimo means, there's going to be a little fortissimo moment in here. So you can try to guess what is happening in the mosquito dance when you hear the fortissimo.
Awesome, thank you.
We got 2 bites during that.
Yes, we did. And you mentioned also that you had a little bit allegro molto, which is interesting also from a grammar standpoint, because the molto in Italian usually is before the adjective. So we would say allegro being happy, you would say something like molto allegro, right? But in musical terms, you can put it after.
It's interesting. Before we had
molto forte.
Molto adagio on the
molto
barber, and now we have allegro molto. People probably just throw it together. I don't know.
Yes, yeah.
It's interesting too because, you know, this music got Italian terms put onto it, but it's not that all the composers are Italian.
Exactly.
So Bartók was from Hungary. So I don't know what he called it. Maybe the publisher changed it to Allegro Molto. We don't always know. I mean, scholars know, but as the player, you don't always know who said what, so.
Right, we don't know the whole like evolution of all these different musical terms and the sort of artistic license that.
These are big controversies that happen when people want to play a piece faster or slower, and then someone says, well, the composer didn't mean that. And
Right. It's how do you interpret what the composer actually meant, and do you even follow that as an artist? Should you? So, yeah, that's a really big debate, obviously.
We will not solve that today.
Perhaps ever. Okay, so for the next one, we have Scherzando, which is one of my personal favorites. And that one is really sort of, can be widely interpreted. So
we do not have a word in English, I think, that is really exactly right. Scherzando?
What would you say, how would you translate that in English?
It's like, well, from a musical perspective, I would say almost playful.
Yeah. Totally.
Okay.
So scherzando is, of course, it's indicating a type of mood. That means a sort of playful mood. But in Italian, in everyday language, it means joking. So if you said something like "sto scherzando," it means I'm just joking with you.
Oh.
And uno scherzo can be a prank, for example. So it's a little bit different, but
Okay.
in that playful sort of nature.
Yeah, I don't know how you exactly play a joke on the viola, but well, okay, let's not even go there. So it turns out Scherzando is actually the name of one of the pieces, also by Bartók, but included in the Suzuki violin repertoire.
Perfect.
So most violin students are going to play the song called Scherzando at some point while they're learning the violin, so I thought I'd play that one.
Great.
Here's Scherzando.
Wonderful. Thank you. So moving right on to our next term, another pretty popular one, which is legato, which is more, would you agree, kind of a technique that you would use as opposed to a mood?
That's a good point. Yeah, Scherzando was a mood. Legato is not a mood. Yeah, technique.
Yeah.
That's a good word.
So legato is really kind of connecting the notes together to have this seamless flow of music and make it really kind of fluid. And so it comes from the verb legare in Italian, which means to tie something together.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, and it could be more in an abstract way, or it could be even in a literal way to tie something together. So yeah, so what do we have for legato?
Well, I thought I would play you the Scherzando song, but as a contrast, I'll play it legato, whereas
great.
before I played it a little more detached, we would say.
That's like a completely different piece.
Yeah, it's definitely a different mood.
I think to like the untrained ear, that could definitely sound like a completely different musical piece, which is really interesting.
A theme and variations.
Exactly. So it's interesting because on your sheet music it says Alegretto scherzando. So we just talked about allegro, and Alegretto, so that etto suffix is a diminutive. And you could even put that onto people's names or as a term of endearment, for example. And so it literally means something like little happy, right? Just a little burst of happiness, something like that. So what's interesting is when you combine this with a scherzando as opposed to a more of a negative playful, or it's more of a, I don't even know how to describe it, but more of a positive sort of playful mood. as opposed to more nefarious, perhaps, or yeah.
Yeah, not a practical joke.
Yeah, not something mean, in other words. Yeah.
When
Awesome.
when I was choosing what to play, I was thinking kind of for the first time about the way we don't have those particular kind of suffixes. Like we can say loud and louder, but we don't have very loud as a suffix that you can add. We don't have loudissimo in English. And I thought, that's too bad. It's just something, that's kind of something satisfying about being able to say allegro, allegret.
Yes, they have so many different little suffixes like ino, etto, so uccio, uccia, something like that. So there's a lot of that in Italian. It becomes a very descriptive language just because of those things that you can add on to every single word. And that's just suffixes. We can get all into prefixes. Great. Okay. So moving on to our next term, we have staccato.
Excellent.
So we just had legato, which means things are connected together, tied together. Staccato, but is kind of the opposite. Would you agree?
Yes, although it gets tricky because there's two layers to all these terms. There's the musical, the way it sounds, and the way you play it. Mm-hmm. So, and those differ on different instruments. And on a string instrument, it's all about what you do with the bow. So, like you could say the opposite of legato is détaché, which means detached, mm-hmm. but that doesn't necessarily come off the string.
Right.
Anyway.
It could be more of a mood, could be more of dynamics or technique.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. So in this case, staccato, definitely a technique. Mm-hmm. And pretty much opposite of legato, sure.
Yeah, it's a little more, staccato can be a little bit more detached, but it just depends on what you're doing with the bow in the instance of playing viola or violin. Is that correct?
Yeah, you know what, and now that I think about it more, I think, I would say staccato is the opposite of legato, but it's not the shortest that you can get.
What's the shortest that you can get?
I would probably say spiccato, which is where you actually bounce, but I think maybe we're going to get to that.
Yes, we would totally get to that as
we'll
our
stop
next
off
term.
at staccato on the way. Well, would you be opposed if I showed once again with Scherzando what staccato sounds like, since we just heard legato?
Sure, let's go for it.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So we were just getting to the next one, spiccato, which you were mentioning is kind of the shortest.
That one is a special string instrument thing. So what does it mean exactly in Italian?
So this is interesting because this is also a term that's really reserved for string players, because as a pianist, I don't think I ever came across spiccato in all my years of playing piano. But
you would have staccato.
But yes, I definitely have staccato in piano playing. So spiccato means something akin to separated, and so playing something spiccato, right, is something done where you're almost bouncing the string. Is that right?
You are bouncing.
Yeah.
We're bouncing the bow, off the string,
So what's interesting is that spiccato is also used in the architectural world to indicate something that's a multi-level structure. So has a really specific meaning, or it's a piece of jargon in architecture, actually.
Speaking of architecture, I was just in Italy, and if I'm not wrong, I thought when I was on the elevator and it told you were going up to another floor, it said piano.
Yes, actually, you're completely right. So another thing that piano means is level or floor. So if you were going to the third or fourth level, fifth level, you would say secondo piano, terzo piano, quarto piano, quinto piano.
That's a lot of pianos.
That's a lot of pianos. So another thing that spiccato means in everyday Italian is having this keen sense of something, so being really kind of sharp.
Wow, that has a lot of different meanings.
It does, yes.
But that kind of fits with the spiccato technique on a string instrument is kind of has a sharp quality to it.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I thought I would share probably the most famous example of spiccato in the orchestral repertoire, which comes from a scherzo by Mendelssohn, and it's in Midsummer Night's Dream.
Wonderful. I don't know if the viewers can see that, but from my perspective, I could really see the bow kind of bouncing up and down just minutely. So, yeah. That's got to be a really tough thing to do. That takes a lot of practice. And
it's an intermediate technique for sure, and you'll start to need to use it when you're playing more intermediate pieces. And it's something that in the beginner repertoire, you're more focused on like the left hand, playing in tune, and also before you work on spiccato, you want to work on making a beautiful tone with long bows. So ironically, you want to, exactly. You kind of want to master some legato first before you move on to spiccato.
Sure, that makes sense. Awesome. So, moving right along, I think we are coming to one of our last terms, which would be glissando, which is also particular to string players, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. There's not that many instruments that you can actually make a slide in between notes. Like if you have keys, then you have to go from one note to the next note. So what does glissando mean in Italian?
So glissando actually kind of means to skirt over an issue. So thinking of almost gliding, skating over something or avoiding something. It comes from the verb glissare, which actually in English sort of sounds like glisten. Totally not that.
No.
So when we're teaching languages, I always teach especially Romance languages, I always teach my students about these terms called false friends. False friends are the opposites of cognates. So a cognate would be the word looks and sounds the same just about in your home language and the language that you're learning, and a false friend would be the opposite. So I'll give you one more example. So in Italian, the word for relative is parente, which of course parente sounds like
parents.
Yeah, exactly. So there are lots and lots of terms like that. So that would be considered a false friend.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Glissando isn't glistening, but there is an interesting, fun technique where you use false harmonics and a glissando kind of together that does a little sound like glistening. Should I play it for you?
Sure. That is really cool.
So
it's really pretty.
Kind of sparkly, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely very sparkly and kind of ethereal.
Yeah,
I feel like.
Yeah. That comes up in. I was just working on a version of Pictures at an Exhibition by Mussorgsky that has that technique in there.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Great. So what do we have for glissando?
I don't know. I just thought I'd play some glissandos.
Perfect.
They're fun.
Yeah. Let's have fun with it. This is really interesting because you can really make something sound like uno scherzo, so scherzando, right? Yes, exactly. Or it can be something dramatic in an ominous way. Or even sad, or I imagine. Exactly.
It is one of the more expressive gestures, isn't it?
It is. That is so cool. I can't imagine how to do that on the piano. You can't. It's very hard to do.
Oh gosh, on the piano. No, well, I know people who play sometimes like inside the piano, and they maybe would sweep their finger over the strings. That's more closer to the. I speak English more closer. That's close. That reminds me of what you said about the actual definition of glissando. What? Say it again. Glossing over. Skating over.
Or avoiding something.
I love that. It's like I'm avoiding playing any notes.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I'm avoiding landing on anything discreet. I'm gonna remember that.
It almost sounds like I kind of have like cartoons in my head, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they use that so much in Looney Tunes, cartoons, something like that, as sound effects.
Yes, absolutely. In cartoons, you might fall in a hole, or the laughing thing. Something silly happens. It reminds me of like Wile E. Coyote.
Yes, totally.
I don't know. Do the kids still watch Wile E. Coyote?
Oh gosh, I hope so.
Is Wile E. Coyote on YouTube? I don't know.
My nephews watch Tom and Jerry, so I'm like, yes.
Wow, great.
So I think we're, one of the, we don't have to do this one, but one of the terms that I included was the Singhiozzando. And this was, we don't have to play this, but So I thought this term was actually really interesting because it means hiccuping in Italian, but in musical terms, it gives the player a directive to play something that has a sobbing effect. So you just reminded me of something that, with Glissando, something that was very sad and kind of heart-wrenching. It seems kind of similar.
It is.
It could be kind of similar, like a crying or sobbing effect.
I'm not familiar with that, so I learned something new, but it reminds me of, if you told me to do a glissando without connecting the notes, what I would think of is portamento. Is that something you have on piano?
I don't recall. I don't think so, though.
Maybe not. What does that mean in Italian?
Portamento?
Yeah.
I don't know that it means anything of itself.
Okay.
There's other words like comportamento is kind of like behavior. It's totally different, I think.
Yeah.
So what is it? Yeah, when played over.
Portamento would be like, or in synthesizer music, it means kind of when you make a glide in between the two
it's
notes.
like sliding into.
Yeah, portamento. Like if you have a Casio keyboard or like an organ, something like that, if you hit the portamento button, it'll make it go like. Or in string music, it can just mean where you take a little light pause in between the notes. But you see I'm using the same bow stroke? That would be portamento. So it can mean a few different things in music.
Yeah, that might be something that is particular to string players.
Yeah.
Or unique to string players.
But no, how do you say it? How do you pronounce that again?
Yeah, it's a hard one. So it's Singhiozzando.
Singhiozzando.
There you go. You got it. Perfect.
And so that would be something like.
I think that sounds like it's sliding from one note to another to have this sad sobbing effect. So Dina, I was wondering, do you happen to know, just for fun, do you happen to know what an aria di sorbetto is?
I have no idea.
So back in the late 19th century in Italy, actually, in the second act of an opera, there would be an aria di sorbetto, so a sorbet aria, where Italians would just eat sorbet or gelato, of course, Italian ice cream, during the
opera?
Yeah, during the performance. So I think that we should probably bring that back. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea. Well, I can't eat gelato while I'm playing, but if the audience can, I'm totally happy with that.
Dina, thank you so much for coming to the Lessonface studios today and playing such wonderful music for us.
You're very welcome.
We really enjoyed your music and having you here.
Aww.
So, the Lessonface School of Languages is now open. So if you want to teach a language or if you want to learn a language, we encourage you to go to lessonface.com to join. Thanks so much, everyone.
How do you say goodbye? Oh, I know this. Ciao.
Ciao. Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.